All right, that's all I had for physical changes in early adulthood. So we will move on to some of the cognitive changes that are taking place. All right, so in all the previous periods that we've talked about, or phases, we went through like Piaget's different stages, but Piaget ended his theory kind of at adolescence with the formal operational period. There are some people that talk about a post-operational period where you continue to have gains in cognition, and there's more detail about that in your textbook. That's another thing that I kind of took out, but I recommend you look into it. So we'll talk more about sort of the broader perspective of cognitive changes. During early adulthood, you continue to have pruning and myelination of neurons, particularly in the prefrontal cortex. I've mentioned a number of times now that the prefrontal cortex is really the last area of the brain to fully mature and develop, and it's during this early adulthood period that that's like completely finalized. So you have fine-tuning of this prefrontal cognitive control network. You have less of that kind of impulse sensation seeking that you have in adolescence, and a move towards more like logical, balanced thought between the social and emotional networks. You have increases in planning, reasoning, decision making, all of those improve. That's partly due to the changes that are happening in the brain, but it's also due to the experiences. So again, in early adulthood, you're doing all kinds of things, going to college, getting a job, getting married, having kids for the first time. All of those are experiences that kind of force you to have to practice planning and reasoning, etc. And so getting that experience really helps to improve all those skills, and it also helps the brain grow the areas that are important for that. So education, career, and family are all influencing these changes. Thinking during this period becomes more complex and also more practical and pragmatic. So we talked about how adolescence was really marked by like that hypothetical reasoning, the ability to come up with a hypothesis and test all these different variables, etc. But a lot of adolescents tend to kind of focus on hypothetical scenarios. They want to solve, like all the world's problems. They have a very idealistic view of things. Whereas in early adulthood, you tend to shift more towards practical, pragmatic thinking, trying to focus on solving actual real-world problems, for example. During this time, people often will specialize, so you'll pick a particular career path, like a major in college or something like that, and really focus your mental efforts on one path and kind of exclude all the other paths that you may have seen as available to you in adolescence, and that motivates changes in thinking. New ways of thinking thrive on imperfection and compromise. So again, in adolescence, people tend to think in kind of an idealistic way. They may view themselves in an idealistic way. They may have really idealistic goals. Whereas once you get into early adulthood and you start to encounter, real world issues, you have financial issues and you have health issues, you have all these things that kind of come at you, then you start to sort of piece those together in this imperfect kind of compromised way. So thinking is a little more complex. It's combining all kinds of different aspects. That leads to an increase in cognitive affective complexity. So it's a better balance of like logic and emotion, and using both of those together to come to solutions for problems. Greater awareness of conflicting perspectives and motivations. So, for example, you may go into college thinking, I really want to be a lawyer, and you have this like idealistic view, I want to be a lawyer because I want to make changes in this area or whatever, and then, you get into school and you realize that there's all these aspects about being a lawyer that you didn't know about, and so you compromise, you change, you maybe shift to a different career that's related or different, and so you have conflicting perspectives and motivations, but you gain a greater awareness of those and can kind of make things work. So you have coordination into a complex, organized structure of all these conflicting thoughts. And all of that really helps to enhance emotional regulation, which is another skill that's driven by the advances in prefrontal cortex. This graph is just showing the score on this measure that's supposed to measure cognitive affective complexity. It's just showing that it's something that increases basically until about 20 to 40, and then it starts to drop off as you get into the more like middle adulthood phase. During early adulthood, most people will start to develop expertise in something. That could be in a career, it could be a hobby, it could be a sport, it could be pretty much anything. But expertise is just acquisition of really extensive knowledge within a particular field. It takes many, many years to develop expertise. Some people give the sort of rough estimate that it takes about a decade from the time you're first introduced to a topic to the time, if you keep pursuing that to develop expertise, takes about a decade. Expertise enhances information processing in that field or area. So people who have an expertise tend to have better perception, better memory, etc. for whatever topic they're an expert in. Expertise is really essential for creativity, so it's been suggested you need to develop that expertise before you can start creating something yourself. So moving from problem solving to finding problems that need to be solved and then creating solutions for them. And again, that goes back kind of to that 10-year rule. It's been suggested that after you've spent 10 years in a field, then that's usually where you can get to the point where you're creating new things within that field. And that kind of mimics our academic structure. Like if you are going to get a PhD, that typically takes about 4 years of undergrad and then 5-ish years of graduate school before you're finally producing a dissertation that's supposed to be like a new original thing. But there's all kinds of other areas where that 10-year rule kind of follows as well. There's a rise in creative productivity in early adulthood due to building of expertise, but that depends on multiple personal and situational factors. So there are some people who can develop expertise and creativity much earlier, some who develop it much later, and so really your expertise and creativity in something depends on how long you've been engaging with that topic, not so much like your actual chronological age.